PX, and there's no time limit on it. They didn't pay for overtime, you know. They had old carpenters, because the young men were going to service in the draft, see, and the reason I stayed there out of the, I was the last group that went into service, because they promised the young men, you know, an education after they came out of service, you know, for them.
Yes.
That is, if you went into service 4 years, you get 4 years of education or college or.
All right, let me have a little introduction here. The date is, this is February the 26th.
What?
And we're talking to Julius Nedwed, who lives in Westmoreland, Kansas. And he was born in April 6, 1912, so he is like 80 years old now. And I'm Dean Schoengert, the interviewer. I'm coordinator of this project in Pottawatomie County. So you were working on the induction base there as a carpenter?
Yes.
Now, how long did you do that then?
Well, while I was in service, I got my rating that way.
I see. Where, you remember where this was?
I know what it's like.
No, where was it?
Well, it was when we went over. It took us 30 days to get there to our destination.
This is on a ship?
On a ship, and I think they wouldn't send a convoy at the time because they knew it would be spotted. So we went down off the coast of canal down there, you know, the red, well, no, Panama Canal.
Uh-huh.
And then we went on, we didn't see land until we got to way south of the equator. We were 500 miles or better south of the equator. Then we came back and came into our first stop was Australia. Then we moved on up to Milne Bay, a place called Milne Bay. That was, and this New Guinea was a place the size of the land east of the Mississippi River to the east coast, and half of it belonged to England or something. That got a franchise, something like that, for 100 years. You know, they had a different form of government, you know, a parliament like they had there in England. And it's just hard for me to get this all straightened out because I've been blind for so long, and that when you can't see, it don't do any good to write it down because you still couldn't find what you're doing.
Well, that's fine.
Any memory that way. But I know some cruel things happened, of course, with the Japs. They didn't take prisoners because they didn't have no to take care of them, if we did, you know, and stayed up ahead of the infantry most of the time. They shot over our heads at targets they couldn't see, I guess, some way, long range.
You were in the infantry?
In the what?
Were you in the artillery or infantry?
I wasn't in either one of them.
So what were you doing?
Well, I was as the Air Corps. Our job was to build airstrips.
I see.
And the first strip we'd put in would be a landing strip. And after that got in, then we put in a what they call a bomber strip, you know, the big planes. Where they had these, well, I forget the name of them now. The name, they had Liberators and I forget the other name of the other one. And of course the Japs, the only plane they had, you know, was that little Zero.
Yes.
And they were suicide ships. That is, they'd have their funeral left. Before they left, as well as in submarines and submarines and those airplanes. It's, you can tell by the sound of them, you know, when they go over. And we'd always have a bombing 2 weeks out of every month, because it's a lot of light down there, because the moon, you know, is right over us, and that gives good light if it's clear. And he did mostly in the night fighting or something like that. And spent a lot of time in foxholes, because, and a lot of air raids. And we fought with the Aussie soldiers, Australian soldiers, and they wore those hobknuckle shoes of heavy rivets, you know, they used in World War I. They got the uniforms that they had left over from World War I. And I know they was great on tea. They didn't drink coffee. And if they have a battle or something, well, they'd always throw the white flag up and take time out for their tea. That'd be 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a break. And of course, it's close quarters, you know, but they didn't fighting. But it is. I didn't enjoy it while I was over there. You had a 50-50 chance of coming back, they said, and you wouldn't go back home until you got the war was over. Of course, they concentrated on taking care of it in Europe first, see, and then when we got ready to come home, we didn't have any ship to get home on, because the ships went over there. They never came back. They stayed over there. We had to depend on our food from Australia. Only we did get some here from the States, which was like powdered eggs, and we never had any fresh milk from the time I was over there till I got back. And I remember that because that's the first thing we got when we got off the boat was a glass of milk. Want me to go on?
How many air bases did you work on?
Oh, we'd only stay 6 weeks in a place. We went all the way from Australia to Japan, step by step, up the line until we got to Japan. And then the war was over. But we was in the Philippines when the war was over. And then instead of coming east to get home, we had to go north. Because the world being round, it'd be a lot closer back to or over. As I said before, it took us 30 days to get over there, but it only took us 8 days to get back.
Oh.
And those ships, go a certain speed. They have night and day. They never stop. When they're out at sea. And we were very seldom in a convoy because it was in one, I know, and going into the Philippines. And I know they had a burial off. It stopped the convoy to dump some bodies in the sea because they wouldn't take them on into. I'd say something like after 3 days, the body isn't. I don't know. And when we travel, why, of course you have to travel. You can't cross the waves. And they'd have out there in the middle of the ocean, those waves would be 50-foot waves. And you can't cross them, you gotta go and roll them. Because if you crossed them or something, why, the propeller would go so hard it'd probably break the ship up.
Because it come out of the water.
Yeah. And then when we got it in there, why, we had to just throw it in the motor in reverse so it wouldn't move the ship into shore,
Did you?
And I know that I remember that because we didn't get any food for a couple of days because the whole crew got what they call seasick, and they like baking bread or something, and everything tipsy topsy, everything on the floor.
Oh. Did you carry your bulldozers and other heavy equipment on the ship for working on the airfield?
Yes, we carried what we call a lister bag, anything that is.
When you're building an airstrip, what was your special job?
Well, we first put down what we call a landing mat. And they'd have a ship out there that was carrying planes on it, the landing, the fighter planes, they called them. And they'd say they'd only stay there about 4 days, they'd have to move on, and we'd have to have that completed. And when we got through with that one, then we get, and we took over some japping strips, but they didn't hold up for us because they didn't have heavy planes. They used these little Zeros, and they was just a one-man plane,
So you couldn't use the Japanese.
Pardon?
You could not use the Japanese landing strips then.
Well, no, and we wouldn't land on the main line because it wouldn't be safe there. But they did have the cemeteries over there because those islands might move, and this place, Australia, there's no place like it because nobody ever wanted down under. And how would they take care of if they got it? It's so far away from any place, and they never did have war there, and they probably never will, because what's there? There's nothing. There's only 2 harbors on the east and 1 on the west, and the middle is natives. They don't wear any clothes because it's, I don't know, something about the climate.
Yes.
The men wore a loincloth, and then women wear grass skirts. Everything they get there, they have to, use what's on the land. There's no factories. When we were there, of course, maybe it's different now. I suppose it is.
You're talking about the
Australia.
Aborigines, original people there in Australia.
Huh?
You're talking about the native people of Australia, not the European.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh-huh.
I don't know anything about. I've never been in Europe.
But these landing strips were just used a short time, and then you'd have to move on and build another one. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and then another outfit, smaller than they'd come and maintain it then.
Oh.
You know, take care of it. Seemed like we had to credit. We had those airstrips were they didn't think they'd be safe on the shoreline because.
Did you have a bulldozer to smooth it all out first? A big tractor to smooth out the land, and then you put these strips on? You have a big bulldozer to work with?
Oh yes.
Did you drive the bulldozer? What did you do?
No, I was a carpenter.
Oh, you were always a carpenter for.
And there's times that they take me to a new place, you know, and I'd have to go ahead with a few men, you know, to find a place to put up our camp.
I see.
And we usually took over a camp where they had before, you know. Mm-hmm. And sometimes to get into camp, we'd have to move it right away because those islands were so small that they weren't long enough for landing strip. And what was left, they had a park on each side. Now those islands over there then, they might even disappear in a storm. And a new one might form. Because that water has a lot of pressure. And rain. It rained much as 5 inches in some places in a year. Now where we were, most of the times around 300 inches. Because when we take a shower or anything, this rain would be body temperature. Now when it was at sea, to get a bath, we had to use salt water. And that's no good, that's salty. You feel like you need a bath after you took it over. And of course I know you know about Chinese food, you know, that all comes from the sea, even the salt. Everything is chow mein, chop suey.
How did you get your food when you first went to a new place to build quarters for a new airstrip?
What?
How did you get your food?
We had we depend on Australia for food, except the stuff we sent over. Now, I know one time we'd always get turkey at Thanksgiving, and this turkey would be over a year old, but in a deep freeze to get it over there. And if you wanted to send something home, it'd take for Christmas, it'd take at least maybe 30 days, except mail. Now they could fly that back, you know, but anything about anything, they could fly that. And I know I'd get mail a lot of times though that it would be, 3 weeks old or longer, come all at once, come bunch up. And of course the mail then they made little copies out of it, just one sheet, you know, little envelopes. So
Were you married at the time?
No, I was engaged, but I come home from my first furlough to get married, and freezed talked me out of it. He says, well, you only got a half a chance coming back. He says, if you get married and have a child or something, that'd be pretty rough for the wife to carry on without a husband. So when I got back, I was married a week after I got back.
Okay. Any other experiences you might share?
Pardon?
When you were in the service, any other, did you get as far as Japan? You said you got to Japan, is that true?
Got what?
To Japan. Did you go as far as Japan?
I don't understand you.
From the islands.
Yeah,
You said you kept moving on. Did you get as far as Japan? The nation of Japan.
yeah, that was when the war was over with Japan.
Did you, when you came home, was the war over?
Yeah, but I didn't get to come home for
Uh-huh.
right away because they didn't have any ship to bring me home. What happened there, that all the pilots and things like that, they wouldn't take a chance coming back. You see, the story was who could build the planes the fastest was going to win out as an air.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I understand that. Where were you when you started home?
Was I glad to get home?
No, where were you located when you left for home? You were waiting to go home. Where were you at that time?
I was in the Philippines.
Philippines.
Yeah. Then I had to go to Japan. Because the closer to go to Japan, the world being round is a lot closer home that way. So like I told you before, it took us 30 days to get over there, but only 8 days to get back.
That was both by ship.
Hmm?
On a ship, both times.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I never got to ride in an airplane. Other than the airport.
What, when you got home, then what did you do?
Well,
After you got married?
I got married. Then I just went in, took up some schooling, and I got my credit for 3 years and 7 months on the farm training, they call it then, you know. It's free of charge. But it took a long time to get that because I didn't get in the first group. By the time I got around, why, those schools had to be so many, 20 or more in a school. And they didn't have that many in these places. They just closed up. So it took some time. I had to go to 4 different places. I started out in I guess here in Westmoreland, and I think seems to me maybe Wamego too. And then I went to school in Blue Rapids, and Blue Rapids up to Marysville. And by that time, why, for GIs, it was all over then. They don't have that now, you know.
Mm-hmm. This school was for farming?
Well, yeah, we'd have to go to, we didn't go every day to school. We'd go once a week, and we'd have shop work maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Take all day, that is. You know, different things you take up, like how to weld and,
See, were you farming at the time?
well, yes, I had my wife's dad bought 80 acres of land in Fostoria, Kansas. Yeah. And I think that the 80 acres of land only cost $700 and some dollars, I think it was. And I spent a lot of money on it, and I didn't get back out, and I built another one. But I got up to where I had 400 acres of 400 acres of land at one time, and I was making all kinds of money. Because it started off at $1 an hour. When I got in the Army, you know, I was getting $21 a month. And that $21 didn't cover everything. You had to pay for insurance, and you use tobacco or cigarettes. You had to pay for them, but there was no tax on them, of course. Of course, cigarettes was practically all tax at the time, you know. But you get 3 miles out on the ocean, you don't have to pay that tax. Or not 3 miles, 9 miles an hour, that's it.
You kept farming all your life?
No, I worked for the government, the USDA they call it, United States Department of Agriculture. There's also another place they call the USA, that is the U.S. Dental Association, but that didn't.
Where was that job?
Where is that at?
USDA, yes, where?
Here at Westmoreland.
In Westmoreland?
Yeah.
What was the job? What did you do?
Well, I measured land.
Ah.
Now then you could get gasoline, I think is 7 gallons for $1. And I got paid mileage from home to home. Now every station didn't do that, but I got it. But I made more money off them the mileage than my salary, because you got I was a supervisor, what they call a performance supervisor.
Uh-huh.
And worked in different counties. And it's, most of the time I had charge of 8 men, not 8 men, but 14 men. Now to measure land, it took 2 people. But later on, it just took on 1. You had to have a helper. Because you drug this chain, you know, and you had to keep track of the distance. And it was a different type. You didn't go by feet, you went by chains and links. Maybe you know what I mean by that. That is, a chain is chains times chains is acres. That is 3 chains long and 3 ways wide. That's an acre of land.
I see.
And the way you figure out what an acre of land is, that's about where a country school would set, about an acre of land.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Nedwed.
Okay, and thank you for,
This will be part of the Veterans Oral History Project in our county. And
now does this have anything to do about my getting money from the VA?
no, nothing to do with that.
I see.